مسيكم بالخير. مشان تشوفوا الحقائق لازم تشوفوا the reality. شوفي موجود، نشوف أشو الواقع وبعدين نحكي قبل ما بدنا. نحن الواقع شايفينه وواضحين فيه. انتوا ما شفتوا الواقع، انتوا استفدتوا من نظام حافظ الأسد واجوا هالزعران اللي اسمهم حزب الإرهاب والإجرام، استفدتوا منهم وعينتوا البنت كانت تعينوه بكل مراكز الدولة واعطيتوهن المال والمجد والمراكز. سفراء بيعيشوا عكيس الدولة اللبنانية، صرفوا عملوا البدكنية، بس انتوا خاضعين لإرادتنا. نحن لا، نحن مع دولة إسرائيل قائدتنا للهلال الخصيب، وإذا ما بتقيد الهلال الخصيب وبتتفاوض مع الأشقاء العرب بمجلس التعاون الخليجي، نحن لا منعيت ومنقول هذا غلط أو هذا صح، لأنه ما عنا طموحات لا على المال ولا على المركز. حافظ الأسد جاب سفالة المجتمع ووساخة المجتمع. قبل منه النفط العربي لما طلع لل 34 دولار من دول النفط، عملوا من زعرق من مخاخ جوادين لبنان خواجات على لبنان. واجا حافظ الأسد من خلال هالصراع الوهمي، جعل من سفالة وحسالة الشوارع والأحياء وعملهم زعماء على لبنان. كلكن شايفين قدامكم. إذا نحن لا واضحين، لا بدنا مراكز ولا بدنا مال، بدنا هالناس تقعد ترتاح وتشوف الحقيقة وتكبش بالحقيقة. الحقيقة هي دولة إسرائيل. اسمعوا شو بدكن تسمعوا وسيتافو دو جوجي. نحن مقتنعين بهالشيء، انتوا عليكم بقى انكم تعرفوا. حتى يسلم لبنان وسوريا والعراق واليمن وإيران. شعب إيران شعب عظيم ومهم، زلوه مجموعة قرصنة عينوا تعيين لتدمير هذه المنطقة. خلص دورك، كم مرة قلت خلص دورك يا أبو قرشان السوري، خلص دورن كلهم. بدنا نبني مستقبل، بدنا نشوف الواقع قدامنا. اسمعوا.
Be done? It can't be done? You just did it. Israel came out of this war as by far the most important regional power in the Middle East. The new generation in the US and Europe are concerned primarily with the question, where does a transgender take a leak? You shoot at us, we will demolish you.
Why is Israel always the mistress, rather than someone you're proud to be with?
Yes, it would be very nice if we also had peace and everybody loved us, but the most important thing is that they fear us and they say, you don't with the Jews. The barbarians are not equal. They're inferior. You need to break them. They want to kill you. Listening to Europe is not an option. If we listen to Europe, we will commit suicide. If they don't have an Adolf, they want a Joseph, and if they don't have a Joseph, they need a Yasser. The French may not have invented prostitution, but they perfected it. A Jew can only feel good if he feels bad. I know it doesn't sound like riding your unicorn into the sunset and living happily ever after, but in the Middle East, these are the options. Do we have a solution? Of course not.
Have you ever noticed that the old people's iPhone storage is always full?
You know why? Old people always make these 3 big mistakes. Let me show you. Number 1 is deleting photos manually. Number 2 is deleting all the apps on...
I'm Jonathan Sacerdoti. If you enjoy these conversations, please make sure you like and subscribe so that you see all of them as they come out on the channel and you help the channel to grow. Professor Dan Shiftan, thank you for joining me. Do you think Israel is in a better or worse position today than it was on October the 6th, 2023?
If you look at the overall picture, Israel is by far in a better situation than before. We have one major problem, particularly in Western public opinion, but I think that even there, knowing what it's about, knowing what we are facing in the West, Jews and Israel in the West is important. So the fact that it was exposed is very helpful in spite of the damage that we have already suffered and we're still suffering. But if you look at the overall picture, in the regional context, in the domestic context, and in the international context, the situation of Israel is dramatically better today than 2 years ago. If I may, let me start with the regional context. Actually, since the establishment of the State of Israel, we had one important turning point after Israel already became a state. And this is now probably the second. The first was at the end of the 1970s, when Egypt basically capitulated. I mean, what the Egyptians wanted for a very long time and tried for a very long time is to lead the whole Arab world in an all-Arab struggle against Israel. And with the charismatic leadership of Gamal Abdel Nasser, the Egyptian president, since the middle of the 1950s, until the end of the 1960s, and then in the beginning of the 1970s with Sadat, the attempt was to pool all the Arab resources, to bring together the huge resources of the Arab world and to some extent of the Muslim world, and to focus them in a struggle against Israel. In 1979, this was broken because the Egyptians have betrayed the rest of the Arab world by reaching a separate agreement. And the important term is not peace agreement, but separate. Separate meaning whatever Israel does, the most important Arab country is not involved. So Israel could destroy the Iraqi nuclear program and the Egyptians did not react. The Syrian program, we occupied, foolishly, but we occupied an Arab capital city, Beirut, and the Egyptians did nothing about it. We destroyed the Palestinian resistance to Israel, the terrorist actions of the Second Intifada, and we now demolished Gaza, and the Egyptians didn't do anything about it. And once Egypt doesn't lead the Arab world, no other element in the Arab world can bring together all the potential of the Arab world against Israel. And this worked for 50 years. Even if it crumbles tomorrow, the very fact that it gave Israel half a century of no real war. We haven't had a real war for more than 50 years. Because what we've had, in Lebanon and in Gaza were major operations, not a war. The last real war before this one was 1973. And for more than half a century, we didn't have war, which made it possible for Israel to become what it is today. So this was the most important achievement. Unfortunately, in the same year, 1979, when Israel managed to deal with its worst Arab enemy, we got another major enemy, the Iranians, because the revolutionary regime in Iran, 1979, came in, and the remnants of Arab radicals joined with Iran to present a danger to Israel. The major danger has been and still is Iran. But the Iranian proxies, which were only the remnants of the Arab world, the Assad regime in Syria, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in the Gaza Strip, the Houthis in Yemen, and other minor elements in the Arab world were still fighting Israel, but they were a very effective protection shield against Iran, so that from the Iranian point of view, the Iranians had a border with Israel in terms of their proxies being able to attrition Israel, and we didn't have a border with Iran so that we can respond in Iran easily. So this was a very challenging reality, regional reality, where Israel was strong, but because of a very sophisticated Iranian strategy, the Iranians could build around Israel something that made it very difficult for Israel, and they themselves were not hurt. And this is what we confronted two years ago. Sinwar gave us the opportunity. Actually, he did us a favor, because had the Hamas in Gaza, the Hezbollah in Lebanon, Assad in Syria, and Iran from Tehran, had they joined together and in a coordinated plan attacked Israel, we would have been in a very difficult situation. It was very convenient for us that we could start with Hamas in the Gaza Strip, then proceed to Lebanon, and after we demolish a large part of the power of Hamas, and then we demolish Hezbollah in Lebanon, and then the Syrian regime falls, and then we have an open pass to Tehran, then we confront the Iranians. It could not have been better from an Israeli point of view. And the enormous achievements in all the fronts put together, and if you want, we will discuss each and every front separately in a moment. The result is that Israel came out of this war as by far the most important regional power in the Middle East. First of all, because we downgraded Iran from a first-rate regional power to a third-rate regional power. And this is tremendously important because the Arab world knew how weak the Arabs were vis-a-vis Iran. And now they know that their chance to confront Iran depends on a strong Israel. Here is the interesting paradox. For the Arabs, a strong Israel today is a prerequisite for their ability to defend themselves. So first of all, what we did vis-a-vis Iran. Then the fact that we gave Lebanon a second lease for life. I mean, they can now hope, I don't know if they'll succeed, I hope they will, to bring back Lebanese sovereignty, because Israel was basically fighting for Lebanon. We were fighting for Israel, but the byproduct is giving Lebanon a chance to become a sovereign state again. In Syria, I don't know where Shara will go, but the chance of Syria to become again a functioning state depends to a very large extent on the Israeli contribution to the fall of Assad in Syria. And vis-a-vis the Palestinians, we demonstrated to the whole Arab world that their second most important enemy, namely the Muslim Brotherhood, can be beaten, and more important than beaten, humiliated. Because if, God forbid, Hamas in Gaza would succeed, the result would be that in Egypt, the threat of a Muslim Brother takeover would be much more imminent. And remember, when they had elections in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, the Muslim Brothers won. In Jordan, again, the Muslim Brothers are very strong and Palestinians are very strong. So it could have resulted in King Abdullah, the Hashemite, losing their position in Jordan. Throughout the Arab world, everybody knows that the number one domestic enemy of the Arab world is the Muslim Brotherhood. So we beat the Muslim Brotherhood. We weakened the Iranians. The Arabs know today, you know, when I grew up, our best hope was one day the Arabs will acquiesce at the existence of Israel. They won't be happy, but they will acquiesce that we exist. Now Arab regimes, Arab governments understand that they desperately need Israel. Were it not for a strong Israel, they couldn't defend themselves against their worst enemies. So our regional position is dramatically better. Now, do they curse us? Yes, they have to do it because Arab public opinion is very radical. And they have to pretend to say that Israel is terrible. Also, when you have even Europeans condemning Israel, the Arabs cannot be more pro-Israel than the Brits or the French or whatever, the Canadians, the Australians, and all the others, and even the Democrats in the United States. So Arab public opinion was radical, will continue to be radical. Arab regimes have to deal with the radical opinion in their own domestic scene. But when it comes to the major strategic considerations, they not only need Israel, they need a strong Israel. And whereas the United States is infinitely stronger than Israel, Israel is infinitely more dependable than the United States, because in the United States, you can have a Barack Obama. And then you capitulate to the bad guys and you undermine the good guys because you're being progressive, because you love peace. So why don't you appease the bad guys? And to give only one example, Biden, when he came to power, removed the Houthis in Yemen from the terrorist list, put pressure, including an embargo on the Saudis and the UAE to stop fighting them, and gave them humanitarian aid. And indeed, when you're attacked by a crocodile, the best thing is to offer him a banana. Because after all, what a crocodile wants in the morning is a banana, and once he gets a banana, he will not attack you. This whole dumb idea makes America not dependable. Now, some Americans are dependable, and what we've seen recently changed to a considerable extent the perspective of America, but they don't know who the next American will be, whereas the next American president, whereas in Israel, whoever in the government understands that we must fight the radicals, that our enemies and the enemies of the moderate Arab regimes, the majority of the Middle East, is in need of the help of Israel. So we do it for ourselves, but they enjoy the byproduct. So to sum up this part, I would say the following. Israel in the Middle East is in a better situation, dramatically better than ever before, because both the all-Arab option of attacking Israel is already over for 50 years, and it proved to be sustainable. Namely, even a war like that, you didn't get the Arabs gathering against Israel because they all realized how strong Israel is. On top of it, we have weakened the radicals very much.
Professor, would you please only give me 2 seconds? Thank you very much for all what do you do. It's correct 100%. But ce qui est très important for us, we are with Israel in death and in life. And we are ready to fight with Israel against all these terrorist gangster bandits. I repeat, Professor, if you give me the permission, that the Muslim Sunnat, 65% of them, they are with Israel. They want a peace with Israel. Même all the Islam, Shiite, Sunni, Druze, majority of them, they want the peace with Israel. And they believe you, what did you analyze now? They are 100% with you. These 65%. Trust me by my fidelity, what I'm talking, what I know. Thank you, Professor, for you to continue, please.
On top of it, we weakened Iran to a considerable extent, and we will discuss it later, I suppose. We got away with being unpopular in the West because for us to demonstrate to the Arabs that we can do things even if nobody likes us in the New York Times and CNN and United Nations and the La Hague courts and Amnesty International and Human Rights
Correct.
Watch and all the collaborators of the terrorists. Not that I intend to do so, but this is the practical, the objective outcome of their position. Nothing will help them. You can run, but you can't hide. The Israelis are not only strong enough, but determined enough. So to sum up the regional part, do we have a solution? Of course not. I think the two of us agree that only crossword puzzles have solutions, okay? But is our position better? Do we have a cause to be the smart kind of optimist? In the Middle East, you have a dumb optimist and a smart optimist. The dumb optimist says things will be good. The smart optimist said things will be bad, but we will get stronger faster than things get worse. So the gap between the good guys and the bad guys is constantly widening, and we can break their face. I know it doesn't sound like riding your unicorn into the sunset and living happily ever after, but in the Middle East, these are the options, because in this region, whoever is not afraid of you, you should be afraid of him. Okay, this is a region where if not only you're not strong, you're doomed. If they don't know that you're strong, if they don't know that you're willing to use your strengths, you're doomed. So we are in a very good position. I suppose we want to discuss other fields, but I have talking over this discussion so much, so let me...
That's fine. I like an interview where I only ask one question and you tell me everything. It's perfect. So,
No, I'm just starting.
No, that's it. But in all seriousness, the comprehensiveness of your thought is exactly why it's a valuable opportunity to hear what you have to say. And what I wonder is, I often wonder this, you painted that picture very well, and I think I agree entirely. And yet I do wonder, especially coming from Britain, but also looking at the Arab countries you've mentioned, why is Israel always the mistress rather than someone you're proud to be with? So these Arab countries, you've said, rely on Israel's strength. Even the West relies on Israel's position. Israel has become effectively a regional superpower in the last 2 years and proven itself. So why are people so coy? Why are the Arab states? Why is Britain? Why is Europe?
For different reasons. The Arabs, I can very well understand. They have a very radical public opinion. These regimes have a problem, all the regimes in the Arab world, in the region, have a problem of legitimacy. And in order to be legitimate in the eyes of their own misguided people, and we can go into it if you're interested, but I think there are more interesting things now to discuss why Arab public opinion is so radical. They have to pretend as if they hate Israel and if they wish bad for Israel. And very, very few, and in the United Arab Emirates more than anywhere else, are they willing to say openly, to some extent, why they want to be with Israel. But even in the UAE, it is difficult. So they must pretend. Look, if King Abdullah would come to me today from Jordan and he would ask me, what is my advice? I would say, you curse Israel 3 times a day, do it 5 times a day, your public opinion needs it. And you can cooperate with Israel, for instance, assist in intercepting missiles and cruise missiles coming from Iran over Jordanian territory and cooperate with Israel through CENTCOM, through the American army here in the region. So that's much more important for me. It's much more important for me is that Saudi Arabia can cooperate with Israel than normalize relations with Israel. Now, if they all want to love Israel and open embassies and speak Yiddish in the Arab world, I'm not against it. And my grandmother had a strategic comment on the subject. She used to say that it's better to be healthy, rich, and young than old, sick, and poor. Yes, it would be very nice if we also had peace and everybody loved us. But the most important thing is that they fear us and they say, you don't F with the Jews. In other words, they're not only strong, but if you push them to the corner, they can be very, very nasty if they don't have another choice. So that's the Arab world. Coming to Europe, Europe needs to tell itself a story and to capitulate. Okay, the Europeans have been capitulating for a long time. And if they don't have an Adolf, they want a Joseph. And if they don't have a Joseph, they need a Yasser. And they have a picture of the world where, you know, not all Europeans, and Europe is changing, and some of the changes in Europe are very positive. But you start out particularly with the left in Europe, and this changed. In the 50s and the 60s, if you were a socialist, you were pro-Israeli, and if you were a right-winger, you used to be anti-Israeli and very often an anti-Semite. Now, the more to the left you are in Europe, the more you're anti-Israeli. So you can see it in Spain, you can see it in Ireland, in Norway, you can see it in the different parties in most countries. You can see in Britain, in your country. The more to the left you are, I mean, if you're really a terrorist supporter, you're Corbyn, okay? If you are willing to have an embargo on Israel, you're the Labour. If you want to be basically positive to Israel, then you're with the Conservatives. And I don't know about Nigel Farage, but I will not be surprised if he will be more pro-Israeli than the Conservatives. So in Europe, wherever you have left-leaning governments, also in other parts, but this is an important part of it, you will have the kind of criticism of Israel and the kind of sometimes even hostility to Israel to the extent that you have it in Ireland. By the way, in Ireland, everybody is anti-Israeli. The Irish are, you know, in the Czech Republic, everybody is pro-Israeli, and in Ireland, everybody is anti-Israeli. But in many other countries, the more to the left you are, the more anti-Israel.
And why do you think that is? Why has there been that switch?
Because in the 1950s and 1960s, we did not yet have this malaise that is now threatening Western civilization, namely the progressive. Let me put it this way. When you're a liberal and a civilized person, you fight the barbarians with one hand tied behind your back because you're a civilized person and you wouldn't do to them what they're doing to us. But when you're a progressive, you tie your second hand behind your back and you say that if you cannot defend yourself, there is something morally admirable when you can't defend yourself. And also, if you're a real progressive, you're a racist because you believe that if somebody is white, he is not only responsible for his terrible wrongdoing, but if somebody with pigments is a barbarian, white people are responsible for it because of colonialism and because of slavery. In other words, you have to be really stupid and completely ignorant. In other words, a university, a product of a university, in order to have this progressive attitude where you become as racist, even more racist than the fascists. You also are against free speech, like the fascists, or you cancel people, you destroy people, not only if they say something wrong, but if they don't say something that you think is right in the last fashion that they must keep up with and actively say stupid things because this is what makes them popular. If you're really deep into woke culture, into progressive culture. And I don't have a problem with these cuckoos because, you know, insanity is legal. Why shouldn't they be allowed to be insane? My problem is that they have an impact with liberals. This is my problem. Liberals are dumb enough to believe that progressives are more liberal than they are. They don't understand that the number one enemy of every idea is the extreme expression of this idea. Who is the number one enemy of nationalism and patriotism? The fascists. Too much nationalism, too much patriotism. Who is the enemy of Jewish national identity? The ultra-Orthodox. because they twist it and become parasites and are racist and are the worst thing that happened to the Jewish people. I think that the Haredim in Israel, and I'm not speaking about what's happening outside Israel where ultra-Orthodox people work, okay? I'm speaking about what is happening in Israel, the hardcore of the Haredi community. So they're the enemy of Jewish identity. Who wants to adopt Jewish identity or to express more his Jewish identity when this is the ultimate expression of Jewish identity? And the same goes with liberals. If you are willing to give up self-defense, which is what they do, if you believe that you're guilty of anything wrong in the world, and by the way, here is an interesting thing. Jews are white even when they're black. In other words, you can be an Ethiopian Jew, but you're guilty because you're a Jew. You just need to study what's happening in Harvard, what's happening in Columbia, and to see what kind of cuckoo ideas. And they put in danger Western civilization, because if you don't destroy the barbarians, they will destroy you. The barbarians are not equal. They're inferior. You need to break them. You can't negotiate with them. You can't appease them. They want to kill you, okay? People in Gaza say, not only Hamas, the Muslim Brothers, they say this is how they educate their children. We will win because we love death, and the Jews will lose because they love life. Yeah. And they get up in the morning to kill Jews, and it has nothing whatsoever to do with occupation, because as far as they're concerned, we are occupiers here in Tel Aviv. And they want to kill Jews, not only Israelis, not only Zionists. They say so openly. So if you have a society in the West where liberals, good guys in the Democratic Party, like Nancy Pelosi, like the leader of the Senate in the Democratic Party, good guys, when they listen to the progressives, when they're afraid of the progressives, then they become a menace to Western civilization, because they deprive us from the ability to take the necessary action in order to demonstrate to the barbarians that they can't win and prevent them physically from winning. Israel needed to prove, and I think we have in this war proven, that in spite of everything you could muster against Israel, from the terrorism to the progressives, all the enemies of Israel together could not prevent Israel from hitting very hard the radicals in the Middle East. And something that we will discuss in a moment, if you want, the new strategies that Israel is adopting after October 7th, that will make it much easier for Israel to defend itself in the future.
So everything in moderation is basically what you're saying. If you're a nationalist, in moderation. If you're a liberal, in moderation. But there seems to be a failure to appreciate that, especially in the West. There's a sort of suicidal empathy. How do we confront that? How do we get the West to wake up to this problem?
Let me first speak about strategic thinking in general. I think it corresponds with what we discussed concerning solutions. If you have an operational mind, you say, what's the problem? What's the solution? Okay, and I want engineers to think this way. Here is a river, I want to get from here to here, we need to build a bridge, this is the problem, here is the solution. How much concrete, how much steel, how many nuts and bolts, let's build a bridge. But if you need to think strategically, and you do need when it comes to national security, you need to say, here is a problem without a solution. What is the response that will combine damage control and the use of opportunity? And we do that every day in our lives. I mean, we're going to die, so there's no solution for it. But do we want to be healthy for a long life of living healthy? Yes. So we do things that are not a solution, but are a very good response. okay? If you have a good medical system. I'm not speaking about Britain, I'm speaking about Israel. So in every day, I mean, everybody who went through this very traumatic experience of being married knows that there are problems without solution. Okay? You learn to combine damage control and the use of opportunity.
So is that, in effect, what you're saying to look at Israel's situation? It's over a course of decades, mowing the lawn, as they put it, to keep calm as you can, small engagements.
But you see, before we even come to Israel, there is something much more fundamental. There are different things that you need to bring together, and the question is one of balance. And if you try to maximize one good element, one good objective, it will be at the expense of another good objective. So the real challenge is not to maximize, but to harmonize, to bring together a balance that will work. And this is what open societies constantly do. For instance, security is important and privacy is important. When you come to the airport, you give up privacy. You say, you can look into my body, not only into my luggage, okay? But at home, you want privacy. So you say security is not the prime concern. And you constantly balance. You want to optimize, not to maximize each and every consideration. And when you have somebody who is ideologically committed to something, and this is the only thing in his life, and he says, human rights, period. I'm not interested in anything else. And then you forget that keeping people alive is part of their human rights, and you constantly focus on the human rights of the terrorist and how you have done wrong to him because you must have done something wrong because he has more pigments than you. And this is what Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International became because radicals have taken over. And radicals have taken over a lot of fields, and wherever they take over is extremely dangerous. And you need to come up with a combination of good things to do, balanced, based on the overall objective of improving the quality of life of people. And when you have somebody who only sees one element and is ideologically committed to it, you should be very careful. Sometimes the fact that you are ideologically committed to something can be a problem when you have to make decisions. I don't know if you like as much as I do this British series of Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister, but in one of the scenes there, they're discussing who will become the Archbishop of Canterbury, and they consider different bishops, and the Prime Minister objects particularly to one of them, and then Sir Humphrey asks him, why do you object to this guy in particular, to this bishop in particular? And the Prime Minister says, he actually believes in God. Okay, there's a limit to everything. So people who are ideologically committed are beautiful people, only they shouldn't be making decisions. The people who should make decisions are those who know how to balance a variety of positive objectives or to confront a variety of negative objectives so that the outcome in the final analysis will be better. So in Europe or in Israel, I don't want the deep right of the AfD in Germany, okay, because I don't want fascism. And I don't want Corbyn or Mélenchon in the far left, because fascists and progressives actually have a lot in common. They feed each other. They are twin brothers in a sense, because dumb people run away from the fascists to the progressives and from the progressives to the fascists, whereas everything that has been proven to promote the quality of life and democracy and liberal values came from the middle of the political spectrum. You can pick an idea from here or there, but the question is, how do you balance it? And unfortunately, what we've seen, particularly since the collapse of the Soviet Union, is people in the West taking good ideas too far. Let me give you an example that has nothing whatsoever to do with Israel. Transparency. It seems as if the more transparency, the better. But what is the outcome? The outcome that in politics today, nobody speaks to the subject, everybody speaks to the protocol. Nobody is interested in what is good. People are interested in what looks good and what sounds good rather than what is good. And we went too far when it comes to letting everybody know everything about everything.
Can I ask then, because this makes supreme sense, that basically strategy is more important than ideology, and yet strategy has to be at least influenced by ideology, what's good and bad, what's right and wrong, right?
You need to adopt your objective, to select your objectives based on ideology. But then the practical way to do it, you need two things. You need a northern star to know where you're going, and you need a topographical map not to crash into the first hole that you come across. And, you know, they asked Tito, Marshal Tito in Yugoslavia, how do you promote socialism in Yugoslavia? He said, I'm driving a car, I'm signaling to the left, and I'm turning to the right. Okay? The great people that helped promote our democratic, open way of life were people who could combine a good idea with a practical way of getting it.
Where are they now? Because it seems to me like you've got one of them in office here in Israel, like him or loathe him, but it seems that many other parts of the world, perhaps in Trump, we've got someone in America for the moment. Where are these people? Why is strategic thinking fallen out of fashion?
First, find out why the Americans, 350 million Americans, could only offer us the choice between Kamala Harris and Trump. Okay? Let's ask ourselves why somebody so capable as Netanyahu in Israel came up with the worst government Israel ever had in terms of the composition of the government. And everybody depends, the two members of parliament can kick you out of office, and everybody has too much power so that you can't, among other things, because you try to be too open. For instance, in Israel, the worst calamity of Israeli politics is the primaries. The primaries in the Likud bring up only the wrong kind of people, the kind of people you're ashamed that they are your members of Knesset or your ministers. Now, here and there, somebody can even make it in the primaries if he's not corrupt, stupid, and repulsive. But in most cases, this is different. So again, ask yourself, what is the product you want to achieve, rather than what looks nicest when you say it and you've never tried it, or you tried it and it failed. So primaries is a terrible failure in Israel and brought us the kind of government we have today. So even when you have a prime minister that had most of his decisions in this war were the right decisions, nevertheless, the impact on the Israeli society of this government was very negative.
Can I just check in there and see if I'm barking up the wrong tree here? Perhaps he had those potholes, but his Northern Star was valid. And so many of the obstacles that in Israeli politics you have to face are coalition politics, are primaries.
But we had coalition politics in the past, but what we are having in recent decades is a product of a system that is too open, a product of a system that discourages people of value, of standing in the society, from getting into politics. And therefore, what we get is the kind of thing we're getting here. Let me perhaps put this question in a broader context. I think what the Israeli society demonstrated in this war is the eighth wonder of the world. It's unbelievable. I mean, here is the Israeli society faced with 2 years of war and 7 different fronts, being condemned by the people we respect. I mean, when people in most countries in the world condemn Israel, we say, look, they're inferior. We don't take them seriously. But when it comes from Europe, when it comes from the United States, it's very unpleasant to be condemned by mainstream public opinion. We suffered from 35,000 rockets and missiles in these 2 years. We went through this period with flying colors in spite of the fact that we have the worst government Israel ever had. It's in spite of the government that the Israeli society is so strong, not thanks to this particular government. Now, here and there, you may have individual people that you can respect, but you look at the overall picture of the Israeli politics and you don't.
Can I play devil's advocate then and say, if you'd had a different government, do you think that despite the different government, Israel would have similarly performed as well?
Professor, thank you very much for all the ideas you give it. But people in Lebanon like to hear from you that the politicians are very corrupt in Lebanon. And the system of election in Lebanon from the 60 never change in their favor for all these corrupt people. Thank you, Professor. Continue, please.
I think we would have performed better if we had an effective government that would better care for people in the Negev and people in the north after the trauma they suffered in the beginning of the war. If they would not have wasted the political energy of trying to fix a twisted judicial system by presenting the other pole of twisting, instead of being completely dominated by the judicial establishment, to be completely dominated by the political establishment when you need checks and balances, when you need independence.
Do you speak English?
More or less.
How old are you?
Have had one of the greatest achievements ever in the Israeli society, and we're not willing to take credit for it, because Jews have a very fundamental inborn defect. A Jew can only feel good if he feels bad. So you have this, first you have to be depressed and then you can recuperate later. But first you need to be depressed about everything. Let me give you perhaps here, if I may, introduce a personal element. Since I cannot read and I cannot sleep on flights, I watch films that are so dumb I would never watch them if I were not in flight. And one of these dumb films had a pearl in it that stayed with me. It's a mother telling her daughter, you know I love you, and there is nothing in the world I wouldn't sacrifice for you, but I don't like you. This is more or less my attitude to the Jews and to the Israeli society. I don't like them. They're noisy, they're unpleasant, but I love them. They're the only thing you can trust. They're the only thing. Look, we are the only society on earth where a well-educated, well-to-do, secular or a traditional woman wants 3 children. Okay? For me, this is more important than many, many other things. There is nothing in the world that signals optimism as much as the love of children. And Israel is basically not a democracy, it is a pedocracy. The children are in power. And the only country that I want to live in is a country where the children are in power, where this is by far the most important thing for practically every Israeli. This is a healthy society. It can be unpleasant very often. It's not polite. It will be rude. It is arrogant, not as arrogant as me, but even by Israeli standards, I'm arrogant. But the kind of arrogance of saying, you think it can be done? It can't be done? We just did it, okay? Look at what happened in Israel. We had 2 societies here, Ashkenazi Jews and Oriental Jews. And in 1981, in the elections of 1981, we were on the verge, not of civil war, but of something very, very bad. And that's what happened in Israel. We had on a massive scale intermarriage between Ashkenazi and Sephardic. Now, it's not easy for an Ashkenazi woman to marry a Moroccan, but it is impossible for anybody to marry a woman from Poland, a Polish Jewish woman. And it worked, okay? And it worked, and you have in Israel more than 1 million children who don't know if they're Sephardic or Ashkenazi. And it is an enormous achievement. And we curse each other based on our ethnic background, because this is the way people get along and finally get married. They curse before marriage as they would anyways after marriage.
Is that a vision then for the region? Because what you described earlier was the Middle East, where, you know, they don't, well, I just want to ask, they don't like Jews very much, but actually they need you and they want you as the Jewish state.
Here you have something else. Here you have a basis of solidarity between people who may not like each other, but feel a very strong bond. Let me perhaps show the other two alternatives. In the Arab world, the society puts so much pressure on you that actually there is no individualism, very little individualism, because before even the government forces things on you, the society makes it impossible for you to make choices. And that's not a good thing. And I don't want to be like that. In Europe, you have the total freedom to do what you want, but the family is weak. And you don't have the good part of a tribal society in the sense of we belong together, we have solidarity. In Israel, you have a combination of these two. We are a very open, individualistic, creative society with a very strong family and a sense of solidarity that is very strong. And you have a very strong solidarity with people that you may not like, but you love. It's a combination that I think is unique to Israel. And this is a resilient society. The resilience of the Israelis is unbelievable because, you see, never in human history have you had an open society where people are free to do what they want and free to go and free to come and free to speak and to do what they want. And at the same time, they know that not only they had a war, but they will have a war, and their children and their children's children and their children's children's children will be in war. In Israel, we used to think 50 years ago, 60 years ago, when somebody had a newborn, they would say, oh, and he will be 18, he will no longer go to the army. Today, you're trying to find a place for him in Golani, which, by the way, is a miracle in itself, because when I grew up, you go to Golani only if you're illiterate and a barbarian. Okay, today everybody wants to go to Golani, and I think this is tremendously a tremendous signal of the success of the Israeli society.
Because the elite unit in the army.
It's not the elite unit. It's not special forces. It is the kind of place you're proud to be in. Okay. I had Gadi Eisenkot, who was a little later, he was the chief of staff of the Israeli army, the commander of the Israeli armed forces. And I think 2 or 3 years before that, he was my student. And his telephone was constantly ringing. So I took his telephone away from him. I gave it to my secretary and asked, who's calling you all the time? He said, people who want me to help them to get into Golani. Okay. So I said, this in itself is an enormous indication of the success of Israeli society. In the 1950s, and even I believe in the beginning of the 1960s, you would recruit the people from Golani in a different months from other people because you didn't want them to come together. Everybody was recruited in August and they were recruited in May. And we called this recruitment Mau Mau, okay, because we said the barbarians are coming, okay? And look at what is going on today. And you brought together in Israel Russians and Ethiopians and Moroccans and Polacks and Americans, and it works. They intermarry. After 1 or 2 generations, it doesn't matter anymore because the children don't know if they're Sephardic or Ashkenazi. And when a war like this war comes, the resilience is unbelievable. Look, we had a very costly war. It probably cost us something like between 200 and 400 billion shekels. Okay, that's a lot of money. And the shekel is stronger than it was before the war, because everybody knows that the Israeli society will recuperate, and that the ingenuity and the inventiveness and the creativity of the Israelis is not going away, and you don't destroy it in a time of war. So let me put it this way, I think what the Israelis went through this time is much more difficult than the Blitz in London. But when they had the Blitz in London, they had the inspiration of Winston Churchill, and we have Amsalem and Gottlieb, okay? We are the kind of people that you would be ashamed to bring home to clean your floor, okay? So this is a society that showed, that demonstrated its strengths. So my optimism is based primarily on the strengths of the Israeli society. When this strong society, in addition to being so strong, also finally adopts the right security strategy, we made a major mistake until October 7th. We were reactive. We waited for the barbarians to hit. Now we are saying, if you have a barbarian, go and kill him, because otherwise he will kill you. And the only thing he's doing is accumulating weapons. So the moment he accumulates weapons, you go there, you kill him, and you destroy his weapon depot. Because he will make war, because this is what he gets up in the morning for. He gets up in the morning in order to kill Jews. He's not trying to build his own society. He's not trying to give his children a better life. He wants to kill Jews. So we have a ceasefire in Lebanon where we killed approximately 350 terrorists since the ceasefire in Lebanon. This is ceasefire. They don't shoot at us because they're frightened, and we shoot at them because they prepare to make war with us, including killing the chief of staff of Hezbollah in Beirut. And this is the way it must be, preemptive. With barbarians, you don't wait until they attack you. If they have something, they will use it against you. Whatever they have, they will weaponize. You know, in the Gaza Strip, they weaponized condoms. They took condoms, filled them with helium, attached incendiary bombs to it or explosives, and when the wind was going from the Gaza Strip to Israel, they sent hundreds and thousands of balloons to Israel. So this is the kind of enemy that we have. And if the New York Times wants...
Sorry to cut you, Professor. It's true what did you say. If they have the possibility, they want to massacre all. They want to massacre the Lebanese who are not with them. They are different of them before they go to Israel to massacre all the Jewish in Israel, all in the world. For that, we have to continue, and we will win the war. And we need Israel to be the leader of the Fertile Crescent, or La Grande Israel, l'Empire is Israel. We support you because it's the only solution to build the future. Terrorist is terrorist, he will never be changed. Dictator is dictator, who will never be changed. Liar, he is liar, he never be changed. Corrupt is corrupt, he will never be changed. It's clear. God bless Israel. We are with you. We want to fight with you. We want to build the future for the new generation. Sorry to disturb you. Professor, continue, please. It's a great interview.
Manipulate in a nasty, dishonest way everything that's happening there. Okay, so the New York Times and the CNN and the BBC and what have you are basically on the wrong side from our point of view. And the fact that we can act in spite of what they do I think is extremely.
Get up to 90% off retail prices on premium brands. Enjoy super fast shipping in just 1 to 4 days in the US. Get top brands delivered before you know it.
So looking forwards, how does that work, especially in countries where the governments do need to appeal to the population? So the New York Times and the BBC influence the population, and then the population votes for people who are less able or willing to help Israel in the fight you've just described.
First of all, most nations don't help Israel. Okay, anyway. I mean, when the Brits put an embargo on us, well, they need our weapon supplies more than we need their weapon supplies. Let me put it this way.
But Israel can't operate totally independently and in a vacuum, I presume.
It can operate independently with American assistance.
Okay.
Okay? You know, I had a meeting years ago with European ambassadors in the United States, and I told them Israel has with Europe a problem, but not a dilemma. A problem, Europe can hurt us, and it does very often. Not a dilemma, because listening to Europe is not an option. If we listen to Europe, we will commit suicide. If we would have listened to the Europeans, Saddam Hussein would have had nuclear weapons, and Assad would have had nuclear weapons.
Correct.
And the intifada from the Palestinians would make life in Israel impossible.
Correct.
Israel would not exist had we listened to the Europeans. So it's not an option.
Correct.
You can politely listen to them and then ignore them. Okay? Now, is Germany trying to be different? Yes. With his merits, I think it may work. But most of Europe, at least at the moment, when you look today at the Labour governments in Australia, Canada, Britain, if you look at the French will always betray you. The French may not have invented prostitution, but they perfected it. Okay, the French will always betray you. So you can ignore the hostility from Ireland, from Norway, from Spain, what have you. I mean, Spain is not even willing to participate in the Eurovision if Israel participates in it. So you have the hostile countries. You have the countries that you don't take seriously, like the French, the British, the Australian, the Canadians. And they can have their fantasy about the Palestinian state when today, you know, Israeli progressives committed electoral suicide. They're not even represented in the parliament anymore, because Israelis understand that this will be the end of the state of Israel. So the overwhelming majority of Israelis, with the exception of a cult around Haaretz, considers a Palestinian state at the moment completely impossible to bring together with the existence of Israel. It will be a major problem. Now, I am committed since the Six-Day War to get out of most of the West Bank and the Gaza. Unfortunately, in our land of Israel, what Ben-Gurion already decided in 1949, namely, we can't have a Jewish state with an Arab majority. And if we incorporate millions of Palestinians into the state of Israel, we'll have a civil war and a backward country, and I don't want to live in such a state. So in spite of the fact that historically speaking and in terms of justification of Palestinian violence, I should perhaps incorporate it into the state of Israel, I'm against it. But if we establish a Palestinian state today and they have independence, they will bring in Iran and the Houthis and militias. This is what they have always done. Palestinians have always, for 100 years, put at the top of their agenda killing Jews at the expense of their own welfare and future. Okay? This is what the Palestinian people is. And when you had a nation builder like Salam Fayyad, and he's the prime minister of the Palestinian people, he can't do anything because he never had more than 2% support of the Palestinian people. Their only role model are people who kill Jews. So there's no point. When you establish an independent Palestinian state, they will use the independence to make war. And then what will happen? We will reoccupy the West Bank, and then we will incorporate it into Israel. So somebody who doesn't want to incorporate the West Bank into Israel should oppose this Palestinian state. But go tell this to Macron or to some British prime minister who doesn't know what he's saying, or to the Canadians or to the Australians and so on. So you simply listen to them very politely, then you ignore them.
So what's your solution then? I hesitate to say solution, but what's your next step? It's to withdraw from the West Bank and from Gaza?
No, I very strongly supported, not only supported, I had a role in bringing about the disengagement of 2005. And I'm not sorry I brought it about. I'm sorry that with the first rocket, we didn't do something to demonstrate what we've done now. Okay? You shoot at us, we will demolish you. And then you will learn, you will be frightened of us on a level that even you cannot sustain. Okay? Even a barbarian cannot sustain. I don't.
Professor, listen to me. I am from the area. I born in the area. Listen to me well. They know only one language, the force. If we don't use the force, they want to do the maximum to massacre the innocent civilian people, not only in the Fertile Crescent, in China, in India, in Iran, they do it. In Russia, you don't know their system. They oblige and make the people, the majority of the people, Islam, afraid of them. Yes, the Lebanese afraid from Hezbollah, and he don't have the force. By this afraid too, because what they do in Syria, the Assad family, make afraid the people. There is no law, there is only one law for corrupt and dictatorial people. It is Hezbollah, it is Assad family, it's the regime of Iran, it's the Houthi in Yemen. It's clear. God bless Israel. Continue, Professor, to listen to you. It is amazing, great interview. A pass to be clear for the people to listen what's going on.
Want to control them. I don't want to settle there. I don't want to be in the Gaza Strip. But I want to be in a constant position where the moment they prepare to fight me, I will kill those who do
Correct.
it, and
Correct.
I will destroy whatever they
Correct.
have. And I will do it constantly.
Correct.
For generations if need.
Correct.
Okay?
Stop doing this. Let me show the biggest iPhone mistake made by old people. Always using.
Look,
Professor, I don't want to cut you, but I'm happy what do you talk. To give you an example in Lebanon, in any time they have the force, they want to massacre all the patriotic Lebanese, all the innocent civilian people who don't support them. They want to massacre them, like he do Assad, like he do the regime, the terrorist Assad, the terrorist regime in Iran. They massacre the innocent people before anything, and they steal the public and the private money. Continue, doctor. Thank you. Sorry, professor. Sorry to disturb you.
real challenge to Israel is to maintain the constructive element of Israel in spite of the barbaric enemies we have to confront. Our objective when we get up in the morning is to build a better society, a stronger democracy, a more diverse culture, a more advanced science, a more creative environment for our children, a better medical system, to build a society and build a nation. This is what we get up in the morning. And from time to time, we have to defeat barbarians.
Correct.
And we live in a region where if somebody is not afraid of you, you need to be afraid of him. So you need to be in a position where people are afraid of you. Where the barbarians are afraid of you, and where the moderate Arabs want to cooperate with you because the same barbarians are their enemies and our enemies. Like the
Correct.
Muslim brothers are their enemies and our enemies. But the challenge is, how can you be Athens when you can and Sparta when you must? Okay? So from time to time, you have to be Sparta for a short while, so that for most of your life, you're building something, you're constructing something. You're giving people who want 3 children a good place to raise 3 children per family.
Correct.
Okay?
Correct.
So our challenge, and I think we're meeting this challenge, is to combine a democracy and a very free society and willingness to cooperate with neighbors who are willing to cooperate with us, with the resilience to withstand a long time, generation long of conflict, and from time to time to go to war. You know, what I hear from Europe recently, namely that European countries are willing to spend much more money on the army, but they can't find soldiers because people are not willing to defend their country. This is the saddest thing about Western democracy. When the new generation in Israel today that performed so magnificently in the war is presented against their age group in the US and Europe, which are concerned primarily with the question, where does a transgender take a leak? This is actually what they have ideologically on their mind, okay? You can be proud to be an Israeli because you look at the young generation and you say, these people are willing to shoulder a very different and a very difficult way of life in order to have a very good way of life. So for a short while, we are willing to live in difficult circumstances. So for a long while, for most of the time, we can have a very good life. And we have a very good life in Israel. You know, during the worst part of the war, they had the public opinion poll in Israel. 92.4% of the Jews said they had a good life. By the way, 85% of the Arabs in Israel said they had a good life.
Correct.
Okay?
Correct.
So when this is what you say, when you have 35,000 rockets and missiles fired at you, then you have a very good basis. And you can be an optimist of the smart kind, namely that says, yes, things are difficult, but we can deal with it.
Well, I certainly think I've found out what kind of optimist you are today. And thank you very much for laying this all out for me. It's been a fascinating.
Thank you very much, Professor. Correct. Correct 100%. What's make me little sad that the Arab of the Petrol, the Gulf Cooperation Council, I will tell them what they do to the people in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iran, what the Houthi do in Yemen, what Saddam Hussein do in Iraq, by the barbary way to kill the human, innocent civilian people. I said to the Gulf Cooperation Council, listen to me, they want to do this for you. If we don't see the future is to cooperate 100% between you and Israel. They want to come to you. They come to Yemen to show you that we want to come to you. This barbary, you don't know them. We saw them, what they do to the people. They want to come. For that, the coordination. Our army, we want to speak the Hebrew like we speak the French and the English. We want to be, our army don't go no place to be training. They go to Israel to be training. correct what he said, the professor. Look, the Arab in Israel, they live very comfortable. 40,000 the income of any Arab who work. They live in lovely way. Why? Because they are establishment strong of the institution of Israel. It's what we need to save ourselves. Coordination with Israel like this. Thank you, Professor. It was very amazing tonight, this interview. I wish everybody, and I want to send it to all the people in the Middle East to hear this and see and believe that it is the reality. Thank you very much, Professor.